by that standpoint, a month and a half after April would be the end of April to the end of May. So my goal was to get out at the end of May, but then he's changed it to 2.5. And I thought, well, this is appalling. Why should a female who's been threatened by a big man with a criminal history be forced to live somewhere in such appalling conditions without normal habitability provisions?
When did you leave the premises?
What's that?
When did you actually leave the premises?
By early June, I was staying in hotels. And by June, I think it was 10th or 11th, I had everything completely out of there, which was just a mattress and a sofa that the next door neighbor with a truck was able to help remove them for me. He happened to be a firefighter who was concerned about the fire safety issues from Portland. He said, if you're in a second floor fire, just jump and don't worry about your broken bones. And so when I spoke to Mohammed, he called me. I got my keys turned in once I realized Severino was the new quasi-manager. I turned my keys in and got a receipt from Severino about those key turn-in June. We were locked out of the apartment by the 16th. I think the 16th we tried to return the keys or see if there was a new manager on premises, and we were locked out. So I definitely don't think we should be billed for a lockout. So his attempt to bill us through the end of July or through that half of June, I would believe is to be completely erroneous. And his eating our deposit, in our phone call that we had in July, I think it was maybe early July, he wanted me to meet, no, it would have been mid-June because it was before I turned the keys into Severino. He wanted me to meet him for what would be a normal walk out. We never did a walk through. And taking a deposit without a walk through, there were numerous problems already. But normally you would meet your landlord, but I was quite afraid because he sounded very agitated and angry at me. So I thought it was unsafe to go there late at night to meet him. But the $900 deposit, one could argue, could be eaten for the month of May rent, where I could never get any management to meet with me. May was preoccupied with them trying to forcefully evict me, even though they refused to give me any deposit back or give me my wages. Depending on how much you argue that my wages are that he owed me, you may say that he even owes me a small amount of $100 or $200.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
assuming in your paperwork you have a lease agreement and the documents to kind of spell out some of these events. When you moved in February, is that when you paid the $900 deposit?
It was paid over a portion.
Over a period of time?
Yeah, over a period of time.
And what was your monthly rent?
$850.
And so you believe you paid the deposit and paid monthly rent through April, it sounds like.
February,
right?
March, and April.
February,
Yeah.
March, April,
Yeah.
and then in May became the conflict, and then June. All right. And so you're asking for $1,700, but you're suggesting that not only, and these are estimates based on what you believe was the diminution of the services and the standards of habitability, and so that's
right. But it didn't include the cost of the cell phones, which most likely were burnt up in a charging surge, which was happening to every unit. Every unit had destroyed phones, destroyed electronics, including up to $1,000 of destroyed property.
And so those destroyed phones, were those yours or were those given to you by Mr. Akbar?
They were mine. What was interesting to me is this phone it was actually really fun learning tech with Mr. Akbar. I had a Google Drive phone that had 6 months of documentation of his knowledge of the problems that he failed to warn us about. When I became manager, I was basically handed a treasure trove of electronic evidence. But sadly, the pictures I took to substantiate this claim were destroyed in the electrical surge that happened. It was kind of worked out in an interesting way to have so much evidence destroyed. But in the meantime, I took small JPEGs in this old phone I have to back up some of the text messages in which he admits he knows there were plumbing problems and electricity problems. And I mean, if there is any monetary decision in my favor, I think that is really not the point. What is more important to me is the damage it did to my record, which I believe was done in malice and in retaliation, when the simple management of a property should not be this complex. It should not be overburdening the courts. And I was wondering if the court could recommend that I be given some kind of letter that if I'm ever faced with trying to get into an apartment and they say, oh, well, it looks like you had 2 attempted evictions on your record. What is this all about? Sure, I can hand them the city filings of a nuisance, dangerous property, but I don't think that's fair for someone to perjure themselves to the court twice, saying in 2 different times he served me a 72-hour notice that was never served. There was a total breakdown of communication, including by a letter posted on my door. And then also, I mean, the wages thing actually hurt my feelings a lot because I took great pride in the possibility of having a side job, a part-time job, and I tried to be very fair and kind with everyone that was there in these circumstances. And I did work hard. I fielded calls. I had to deal with him locking everybody out of the laundry room, numerous text messages. It completely interrupted my life. So me paying full rent for April, I did not get full peaceful enjoyment. I got numerous run-ins with workers in and out, as well as this management of his manager's phone. I mean, if I could get paid, I think it's not fair to exploit people for their labor and then retaliate against them for doing their job.
So we're running up to the end of our hour. I do want to hear from Mr. Akbar. I also want to receive exhibits, but maybe it would make sense to have Mr. Akbar talk a little bit about his position on the claim and his support for his counterclaim, and then we can see how much time we have left and see if we need to continue this hearing.